Welcome to our Customer Success Leadership podcast. Today, I have the pleasure to receive Lamiae Sadki. Lamiae is a global customer success director. Lamiae has over a decade of experience in creating and building high-impact customer success teams. Good morning, Lamiae. How are you? And I would love for us to introduce yourself and tell us a bit more how you have navigated the startup world so far.
Yeah, of course. Excuse me. Hi, Catherine, and thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and talk about something that I'm deeply passionate about, customer success. So, my name is Lamiae Sadki, and I am a global customer success leader. Over the past years, I've been leading and building high-performing customer success teams, mainly in startups and scale-ups within the SaaS and the digital ecosystem. So working across e-commerce, post-purchase, marketing, as well as the content and creator economy. So my main focus has been to drive retention and customer satisfaction, as well as to drive revenue growth and long-term customer advocacy. But to be honest, my background is a little bit unique. So I do come from both an engineering and a marketing perspective, which kind of allows me to bridge the gap between technical innovation and strategic business outcome. And in doing so, throughout the years, I've helped hundreds of top global brands redefine their digital strategy, resulting in increased conversion, higher revenue, as well as a strong customer experience and advocacy. What else? Throughout my career, I've also been focusing on transforming the customer success from a reactive support function into a strategic revenue driver. And so helping companies not just retain customers, but actually turn them into long-term advocates and growth engines. So I'm super excited to be here today and share my experience and what I have learned in building a world-class CS organization, hiring the right success team, and much more. So let's dive in.
Yeah, let's dive in. My first question is for companies, who would like to set up a customer success team, or for those who want to expand or improve their existing ones. So I'm going to ask you, what are the skills and qualities you are looking for when you are hiring in a CS team?
So hiring the right customer success team is absolutely crucial. It can truly make or break the whole function. And when we talk about skills, of course, there are many skills that contribute to building a high performing CS team. But maybe I'll just focus on the top 4 or 5 that I kind of think are really essential today. So, in no specific order, I'll start with communication skills. As you know, Catherine, CS teams are actually the face of the company. So, great communication is at the heart of what makes them successful. And it's not just about being able to talk to customers, it's really about being able to translate some complex technical jargon into clear and digestible insights that customers can actually act on. Because not every customer out there is going to be tech savvy. And so being able to bridge that gap is absolutely essential. And, great communication, it's not just about explaining, but it's also about listening. So really being able to understand your customers' goals and objectives, their needs, as well as their challenges. And on top of that, the CS teams, they have to run business reviews, they have to lead trainings and presentations. So being able to engage an audience and make an impact is very important. And that's basically why great communicators don't just convey information, they actually create the clarity, they build the trust, and they also reinforce the value of your products and services. So that's definitely a key skill to have.
Yeah. Skill number 2.
Skill number 2, I would say emotional intelligence. So customer success at the end of the day is a relationship-driven function. And so emotional intelligence is actually what separates good CS professionals from truly exceptional ones. So as you know, CS teams always or often have to deal with customers who are frustrated, clients who are under pressure or navigating change. So being able to read emotions, to empathize, and to handle complex and difficult conversations with tact and diplomacy is very, very important. And typically, CS teams with high EQ or high emotional intelligence are able to de-escalate tense situations. They're also able to build strong trust-based relationships and also effectively influence stakeholders. And this skill actually ties into stakeholder management. So the ability to understand different personalities, the ability to adapt communication styles depending on the customer, as well as being able to get both internal teams and executives aligned on, customers' needs, basically.
Yes, stakeholder management, very key. Skill number 4 now, or was stakeholder 3?
Yeah. Number 3, I would say change management. So especially for startups and scale-ups, adaptability, is absolutely a necessity. And growth stage companies typically would evolve fast, and this basically means frequent changes, right? So whether that's company reorg or strategy shift or like a scope adjustment, a great CS team need to be comfortable navigating uncertainty. They need to be staying proactive, and they need to be able to lead their customers through these transitions. But the reality is, sadly, many people actually resist to change. That's just, I would say, human nature. But in CS, those who actually embrace it and are able to lead their teams and their customers through it are the ones who really, really thrive.
Any other important skills? I'm sure there are more than 5, but any essential skills you can think of?
Maybe I'll add a couple more. So number 4, I would say organizational skills. As you know, CS teams have to juggle 1,000 things at once. That's just the nature of the job. So between running trainings and preparing for customers, business reviews, and working with marketing team on a case study, or even like working with the tech team on fixing a customer issue, things can get overwhelming really fast. And that's why strong organizational skills are non-negotiable. So when you have a well-structured CS team, you're not only able to, be more efficient and drive a better customer experience, but also avoids burnout. And that's basically the difference between being reactive and staying in control. The last but not least, I would say business acumen. So CS has actually evolved. It's no longer just about retention, but it's also about revenue growth. And so customer success is increasingly seen as a revenue driver and not a cost center anymore. And that is why CS professionals today, they need to have really strong business acumen. So it's not just about, how can we retain customers, but actually about identifying also opportunities for upsell, cross-sell, as well as expansion. For me, it's really about that mindset shift from, how can we retain that customer to actually how can we help them grow in a way that benefit both them and our business. And I think that the best CS teams are actually the ones who can seamlessly deliver or seamlessly blend value delivery with the commercial impact. And Catherine, we've talked about so many different skills, but ultimately hiring the right customer success team is not just about, checklist or a skills checklist or checking boxes for skills. It's really about finding people who embody those qualities and who are actually able to deliver an impact. So when you have a strong communicator, a problem solver, a highly organized and commercially savvy individual, this is really when customer success becomes a true competitive advantage.
That's an excellent winning formula. Thank you, Lamia. Leads me to my second question. How can companies evaluate the impact or the value that customer teams bring to the organization?
Of course. So basically, you can't improve what you don't measure, right? But I'm really still surprised by how many companies out there still don't have clear success metrics for their CS team. So at the end of the day, customer success is about value delivery. How do you know that your CS team is actually delivering value? And the answer is basically measurement. And that's why KPIs, OKRs, they're just non-negotiables for companies that really want to understand what works and what doesn't and how to improve. But ultimately, those KPIs don't need to be set in stone. They need to really evolve depending on the business priorities as well as, what impact the customer success team is expected to drive. And myself, like having spent over a decade in CS, I've built and used so many different KPIs for so many different businesses, depending on customer base, on industry, on growth stage, and so on. And a set of KPI that might work really well for a business might not work at all for another. But ultimately, there are some key universal metrics that businesses can use to really evaluate whether their CS team is actually delivering value.
Yes, that's true. Now, KPIs. I know you have worked extensively on defining those KPIs in your career. So would you mind sharing some of them?
Yeah, we can break down maybe a few. So, starting with revenue retention. So, revenue retention, you have the gross revenue retention or GRR, and then net revenue retention. These two are, gold standards in CS performance. So, if we start with gross revenue retention, this basically showcases how well you're able to retain revenue without factoring it in any expansion. So a high GRR or high gross revenue retention indicates a strong retention, whereas a low GRR signals that there is a problem either with churn or contraction. And then you have net revenue retention. So net revenue retention takes it a step further. It does also include upsells, cross-sells, as well as any expansion. And this basically showcases if your team is just retaining customers or are they actually, growing revenue from them as well. And ultimately, if your customer success team is truly delivering value, then you should be able to see both really strong retention as well as revenue growth from your existing base customer.
So another KPI.
Yeah, I can also talk about renewal rate. That's a strong indicator of whether your customers are actually seeing long-term value in your product. So a high renewal rate basically means that your customers are sticking around, that your CS team is actually effectively addressing their needs, and that they're actually also proving ongoing value. However, a decline in renewal rate showcases or is actually a red flag that something needs fixing, whether that's the product, whether that's customer engagement, or customer fit, and so on and so forth. I can add maybe 2 or 3 more. So another KPI that companies can use is customer engagement. So basically, a disengaged customer is just a churn risk waiting to happen, right? So if a company has got access to some CS tools, and there are so many out there in the market that can actually track customer engagement, then this is definitely a game changer. So being able to understand, are your customers logging in? Are they interacting with your customer success team? Are they using your key features and so on? And basically, low engagement means a risk of churn, and CS teams need to be proactively addressing this and monitoring it for sure. Um, I can also highlight business reviews or maybe any value-driven conversation. So great CS teams actually, they don't just solve problems, but they also drive strategic conversations. So tracking things like business reviews, whether that's QBRs or EBRs, can be a great way to measure whether your team is actually continuously demonstrating value to your clients. So if your customers are engaged in those conversations, then that basically means that they see your CS team as a strategic partner and not just another vendor. So that's why it's very important to track that. Um, I can maybe add a couple more, and then we can move to the next question. But a popular one is case studies. So anything that case studies, customer advocacy, basically means when you have a happy customers, they don't just renew their contracts, but they actually become your biggest advocates, right?
Yeah.
So if your customers are actually willingly participating in case studies, then that's a great kind of like it's a great indicator that they're actually seeing value. And in a similar fashion, being able to track customer references, and that's basically how many times your customers are willing to vouch for you on sales calls, can really be an indicator of CS impact. So when your CS team is really delivering value, then your customers are not just staying in, but they're also actually helping bring new business, right?
Yeah. That's a great
Um,
one. I think that's when a company reaches that stage, I think they know they are doing well. Yeah.
for sure, for sure. And then last but not least, I would say churn rate. So for me, every churn tells a story, but are you actually listening? So it can seem obvious to track churn, but are you actually acting? Like the big question is, are you actually acting on it? Are you proactively identifying customers who are at risk of churn? Are you created proactive plans to actually save them? What is the percentage of customers who actually are saved, through specific interventions? So at the end of the day, a strong CS function is also a function who's able to reduce churn through kind of like targeted intervention. And these are just some of the KPIs that we have gone through that companies can kind of like use to really understand or like to answer the big question: is our customer success team just keeping our customers afloat, or are they actually actively kind of like driving revenue? And success in CS is actually about strategic impact. So the more effectively companies track it, the more they can actually refine it and further elevate their CS team to be a true revenue driver.
Excellent. Yeah. Now it's a question for professionals wanting to move into customer success. What kind of advice would you give them?
That's a really good question, Catherine. So the thing is, customer success is one of the fastest growing careers, especially in tech. And the good news is that you don't necessarily need a traditional CS background to be able to break in. So many successful CS professionals actually come from all sorts of different fields, including marketing, sales, consulting, support, and even teaching. So the main thing here, or the key, is actually knowing how to position your existing skills to actually match what CS hiring managers are looking for. And there are different ways of kind of doing that. I can maybe list a few. So you can basically start by understanding what customer success is. So before even applying, my advice would be to ensure that you really understand what CS is about and what hiring managers are looking for in their CS teams. And it's not just support, and it's not just about keeping customers happy, but it's really about being able to deliver value for your customers, as well as helping them achieve their goals and their objectives. It's also about being able to drive revenue retention and revenue growth, being able to build long-term relationships, and being able to build advocacy as well. So you can basically start by kind of reading CS or like industry news or blogs. You can also listen to CS podcasts like this one, or even follow many CS leaders on LinkedIn. That's definitely one way of doing it. Another way they can do that is by highlighting any transferable skills, even without having any CS experience. The thing is that most CS roles, they actually don't require any previous CS experience, but they do require to have the right skills. So if you're an individual transitioning from another field, make sure that you're actually emphasizing the skills that you already have that kind of can be relevant to CS. For example, if you're someone from sales, make sure you're emphasizing your experience about negotiation, upsells, cross sells, as well as relationship building. If you're someone coming from marketing, make sure you emphasize your experience in storytelling, in customer engagements, and building customer advocacy. If you're someone coming from, say, support, you can highlight your experience in resolving customers' issues, in handling escalations, as well as building customer satisfaction. Even if you're someone coming from, say, consulting or teaching, being able to educate and guide customers is absolutely gold in CS. So we can kind of like break it down into a couple of more practical examples. For example, someone coming from sales, they could also highlight in their CV like a bullet point saying, I manage a portfolio of X number of clients, ensuring long-term retention and identifying upsell opportunities, resulting in, for example, 20% increase in revenue per customer. Someone coming from support, they can add a bullet point to their resume saying, I resolve 200 plus customer inquiry per month, and at the same time working proactively with the product team to improve, to identify recurring issues and improve customer experience. The goal here is to be able to frame your past experience in a way that aligns with what CS managers are actually looking for.
Excellent. I'm sure you will be contacted by many people with these wonderful explanations. Lamia, any other examples that you can share for professionals wanting to break into CS?
Yeah, another one that comes to mind is being able to gain CS experience without even having a CS job. So kind of like build your proof. So if you're coming from a completely different industry, then you might not have a direct CS experience, but you can actually start building one now. So you can do that by taking courses and certifications. You can even shadow a CSM. So if you work in a company with an established CS department, then you can ask, to see if you can actually shadow a CSM or like help them with an existing project. You can also start talking like a CS. So even before you land the role, you can start engaging in CS communities. You can even write blog posts or like write in LinkedIn posts to kind of like showcase your knowledge of CS. Then networking eventually is kind of a no-brainer, making sure that you're joining those CS communities and that you're engaging with hiring managers on LinkedIn is definitely a great way. Ultimately, breaking into CS is about showing that you really understand the role, that you do have the right skills, and that you're really keen to learn. So if you can prove that you can drive customer success, whether that's through certifications or past experience or proactive learning, then you'll definitely stand out as a very strong candidate.
Okay. Career path. Can you tell us a bit about the career path? Because you have already indicated to us from which other functions those professionals can come from. But within CS itself, what kind of careers can they, hope embracing?
Yeah, good question, Catherine. So basically, I always say that one of the most exciting things about CS is its actual central role within the company. It kind of connects to almost every single department. And this basically means that growth is not just vertical. So it's not just about climbing the leadership ladder, but it can also be horizontal, enabling professionals to actually transition into other areas of the business depending on their interests and depending on their strengths. But maybe let's start with the most traditional customer success path, which is kind of like the vertical growth. So most people would typically start their CS journey in an entry-level role, like a customer success associate or customer success executive, or even transitioning from a customer support function. And at this stage, you're basically or typically handling a small, like a kind of like a small portfolio. You're really learning the basics and the fundamentals of relationship building or problem solving. And as you gain experience, then you kind of like move up to a customer success manager role or like an enterprise CSM or even kind of a senior CSM. So here you kind of take on bigger and more strategic accounts for the company. You also start handling renewals, upsells, and expansion. You also start deepening your relationships with customers. From here, you can either specialize further or you can move to kind of like leadership roles. And that would be a CS team lead, a manager of CS, a head of CS, or even a director of CS. So if you're basically interested in managing people and leading people, then you can start by leading junior CSMs and kind of like shaping the CS processes. Whereas at the director level, you're kind of like more focused on strategy, on high value accounts, as well as optimizing CS operations. Then for those aiming to kind of like more executive leadership, the next steps would be a VP of customer success or chief customer officer.
Mm-hmm.
So at this level, you're typically responsible for company-wide strategy, for scaling operations, and tying the CS outcome to business revenue and growth. And one more thing I would like to add, especially when it comes to leadership, moving into leadership is not just about being a great CSM, because managing and leading teams does require a whole, different skill set, including coaching, mentoring, strategic thinking, and cross collaboration leadership as well. Then we obviously have the horizontal move, right? Or like transitioning into other parts of the business because the CS actually interacts with so many different departments. Many professionals successfully pivot into other areas of the business depending on their interests, depending on their strengths as well. For example, they can move into product, they can move into marketing, sales, and even partnerships. So I would say that CS is definitely an excellent launchpad for various career paths. And basically, to kind of like summarize everything I've said in my answer here is that the key to growth in CS is really for everyone to understand what really excites them. So whether that's customer engagement or strategy or leadership or cross-functional collaboration, whether you kind of want to lead teams, or you want to manage enterprise customers or pivot in a completely different department, customer success does provide endless opportunities.
Yeah, that's this is a wealth of various roles and various career opportunities. So I love the way you have put it, Lamia. Question: it's one thing to hire teams; it's another thing to retain them. And to retain a team, you have to motivate them, right? Or at least to help them to stay motivated. I don't mean that the leader has to do all the motivation for the team, but what are the means or the techniques you use yourself to keep your team highly motivated?
Yes, so keeping a customer success team motivated for me is not just about perks and incentive, It's really about creating an environment where people feel valued, where they feel empowered, and kind of like connected to a bigger purpose. So, having led global CS teams, I kind of found that motivation came down to many key areas, but maybe I'll just highlight three of them. First of all, you need to kind of give them a clear purpose and show their impact. So, the reality is that people stay motivated when they know that their work matters. So leaders need to be able to tie their team's effort to the business outcome. So show them how their work is actually impacting, say, for example, business retention, expansion, and revenue. Leaders also need to celebrate the customer success stories in order to showcase their team all the value that they're actually creating. For example, at one company, I have created customer success story initiatives where the CS team would share their success stories with the wide company. And this kind of like reinforces that their work actually matters beyond just metrics, Another way would be by creating a culture of growth and development. So, one of the biggest things that you can do to keep your team motivated is to really invest in their growth. So, that means giving them a clear career path. That also means providing them with training and mentorship and skill building opportunities, whether that's through certifications or whether that's through say trainings or just kind of like helping them level up their expertise. And as we mentioned before, it's not just about moving up in CS. Some of the best CS professionals have actually ended up in leadership, in marketing, in sales, or even in product roles. I've actually had some team members that successfully transitioned from being a CSM to sales roles just because we encouraged the conversations about career opportunities and kind of like help them see what was possible. However, the reality is that as a leader, you just cannot always promise a promotion within a specific time frame, right? And that can kind of like feel a little bit, not a little bit, actually, can feel really discouraging. But as a leader, your job at the end of the day, it's not just to be kind of like handing out promotions, but it's really to make sure that your team is actually ready when the right opportunity comes in, whether that's in your company or even kind of like somewhere else. Because, if you're helping your team grow, then even if the next step is not necessarily within your business, you're still doing right by them. And for me, that's kind of what real leadership is about.
All these excellent tips actually can apply to other functions because I agree with everything to keep teams motivated. Any other tip you would like to share with us, Lamia?
Another way I would say is to empower your teams with autonomy and trust. So micromanagement kills motivation, but empowerment fuels it. So my advice to leaders is to ensure that they're giving their teams ownership over their accounts, that they're trusting them with strategic decisions. It's also very important to ensure that you're encouraging creative problem solving and kind of like rather than just following rigid processes. And make sure that you're involving your teams in cross-functional collaboration. So allow them to have a voice in shaping the product, in shaping the customer strategy, as well as the marketing. So at the end of the day, the most motivated teams are really those who feel valued, who feel heard and empowered. So if you are building a CS team where people can see purpose in their work, where they can see opportunities to grow, and where they have a leadership team that supports them, then motivation takes care of itself.
Absolutely, absolutely, Lamia. Two letters are on the lips of everyone almost, AI. So my question to you is, what impact does AI has on customer success? And do you think things changing dramatically in the next 5 years?
Absolutely. We're hearing AI everywhere. And in fact, AI is transforming CS. But for me, rather than actually replacing CS roles, it's actually enhancing efficiency and enhancing scalability. And there are so many different ways in which AI is influencing CS. But maybe if we look at the main ones, or like maybe the top three ones, we have the proactive customers insight. So if you have AI powered metrics, then you're actually able to predict churn risks, to predict expansion opportunities based on customer behavior, their usage pattern, as well as their sentiments. And this basically will allow your CS team to proactively intervene before the customer disengages, rather than kind of like reacting after the fact they've decided to kind of leave. Another way in which AI is also influencing CS is by automating any repetitive tasks and by freeing up more time for kind of like high value work. So when we talk about AI chatbots or automated workflows or like self-serve knowledge bases, all of these are reducing the need for your CS team to kind of like handle very basic inquiries. And instead, it actually lets your CS team focus and spend more time on strategic conversations, on expansion, on relationship building, and so on and so forth. Last but not least, we can also talk about personalization at scale. So AI actually enable hyper-personalized engagement based on customer history and kind of their needs. So for example, instead of generic check-ins, CS team now can send data-backed as well as a value-driven insights that kind of like resonate with every single customers. But to kind of sum it up, the future of CS is not about AI replacing CS. It's really about AI enabling the CS team to work really smarter and not harder. And the best CS teams will be the ones who are actually able to leverage AI to drive more efficiency, while of course keeping the human touch at the heart of every interaction.
Lamia, thank you very, very much for sharing all these amazing insights on customer success with us. I really appreciate your input. I would like you to finish if you have any final thoughts you would like to share with us.
Yeah, really quickly. I mean, this has been an incredible conversation. So thank you so much, Catherine. I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of share the insights on building world-class customer success teams, talking about career growth and the evolving role of CS in really driving business success. My final thoughts would be, for CEOs and hiring leaders, make sure that you're investing in the right CS talent. And this is basically not just about retention, it's really a long-term game, ensuring revenue growth and customer advocacy. And companies who do see CS as a revenue driver, not a cost centers, are the one who are actually going to win in the long run. And my final thoughts for any CS professional out there or anybody looking to break into CS, then remember that it's all about value. Whether you're helping customers succeed or influencing, internal strategies or leading teams, the key is to always focus on delivering a measurable impact. Keep learning, staying proactive, and never really underestimate the power of strong relationship. I also want to say, if anyone wants to continue this conversation, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to share insights, to answer questions, or just talk about all things success. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lamia. I will put your LinkedIn profile at the end of this video. And for our audience, until next time, thank you very much for staying with us.
Thank you. Cheers.